As much as people love movies that make the box office chart, well, not all make the list. Some of the movies released to hit the market but turn out to be major flops. And no, it's not the actor's fault that he or she couldn't do well in the role. But we're talking about the returns the movie brings back, considering its production costs and more. Some movies on this list didn't even manage to recover the expense, while some were major disasters. Hello and welcome back to our channel. In today's episode, we're going to list a few movies which I'm sure you'll be aware of that are box office disasters of all time. We'll be counting down these movies, so watch out to see if you find one that you're familiar with. Number 13. After Earth. As much as Will Smith and Jaden Smith's duo in The Pursuit of Happiness brought them fame and success in the acting field, After Earth, which was released in 2013, had the opposite results. Why? Well, the loss incurred was $30 million. Will Smith even said that this movie's failure was literally the hardest thing he ever had to deal with in his whole life's acting career. And if you have watched it, you won't see why it became a flop. The first was its strange accents, which made the film extremely difficult to digest. But even though the movie's plot and concept were actually good, everything just seemed to fall apart. Number 12. The Adventures of Pluto Nash. The Adventures of Pluto Nash was a science fiction comedy that was neither funny nor adventurous. It went on to be a box office disaster and was universally panned by critics and the few moviegoers who saw it. The movie, which stars Eddie Murphy, is set in 2087 on the moon. Murphy plays Pluto Nash, a nightclub owner who refuses to sell his establishment to the local mob. After the movie was finished in 2000, it was put on hold for 2 years before being released in 2002. After an estimated budget of $100 million, its global total gross earnings were $7 million. Despite the fact that it would perform better on DVD, this makes it one of the most expensive bombs ever. Number 11. The Mummy. No, we're not talking about the blockbuster released in 2001. We're talking about the one released in 2017. Yes, the one where Tom Cruise starred. Even though there was a lot of anticipation for it during the teaser, when it finally came out, it didn't seem to make much of a noise. The movie was supposed to kick off an MCU-style film series for Universal, but it was a big surprise for the executives at Universal when this movie came out and audiences were blown away by how bad it was. As much as critics thought the movie would be a success, The Mummy lost almost $100 million. Number 10. Transformers: The Last Knight. If you've ever watched Transformers and saw its sequel, you're probably wondering why the Transformers franchise stretched out its main story so much that viewers watching the movie and its sequels just got bored. This was released in 2017, and though its predecessors did garner billions of dollars, this one seemed pretty stretched out. The movie had an overall budget of $217 million, but it went into making the first box office disaster, resulting in a loss of about $100 million. But even though this became a box office disaster, it did get 10 nominations at the Golden Raspberry Awards, considering that what contributed to this was its bloated movie budget, marketing, and more. Number 9. Heaven's Gate. The 1980 Western starring Jeff Bridges, Chris Christopherson, Christopher Walken, and Isabelle Huppert has become a cult favorite, but it was such a box office bomb that the studio went bankrupt. This film was written and directed by Michael Cimino, but it was a commercial failure that damaged his reputation and caused the Western film subgenre to go extinct for a full 10 years. Cimino was criticized and held accountable for the failure, and his vision caused the movie to cost 4 times as much. His insistence on complete creative control further increased the studio's control over other films, which saw Coppola and Scorsese withdraw from the project's domain. The film, which cost $44 million to produce, is said to have earned only $3.5 million worldwide, but the fallout from its failure will shake the industry. Number 8. Sinbad: Legend of the Seven Seas. This DreamWorks animated film from 2003 was doomed, despite Brad Pitt and Michelle Pfeiffer's combined Hollywood power and talent. The response to Sinbad the Legend of the Seven Seas was generally positive. In fact, it received some positive feedback. But audiences were no longer interested in old-fashioned cartoons after the huge uproar that Pixar's Finding Nemo caused just a few months earlier. DreamWorks Animation almost vanished without a trace after this backlash. The company moved away from traditional films that were drawn by hand and looked for a safe haven in computer-generated animation. Luckily, they released Shrek and the Madagascar series, which made it one of the leaders in the animation entertainment industry today. Number 7. Stealth. Stealth is a 2005 science fiction action film starring Josh Lucas, Jessica Biel, and Academy Award-winning actor Jamie Foxx. It was directed by Rob Cohen, who has directed popular action films like The Fast and the Furious and XXX. But Cohen and his team hoped to remake the film replicating these successful movies. Later, Stealth was released by Columbia Pictures on an inflated budget of $135 million. However, the movie grossed only $76 million worldwide, making it a box office failure. The film was panned as a stupid Top Gun by critics, but also had to compete in theaters with Wedding Crashers, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and Sky High. Number 6. Mars Needs Moms. There have been dozens of modern computer animated comedies that people of all ages can enjoy. However, the 2011 film Mars Needs Mom would not be among these films, which was a critical and commercial failure. Walt Disney's film had a budget of $150 million but only earned $9 million, making it the biggest box office failure of all time. Part of its failure is said to be due to the film's theme: the mother is prey to her child. In addition, the film has also been criticized for being set in an uncharted valley. Negative word of mouth is also spread on social media, which of course plays an important role in modern cinema. Number 5. Cutthroat Island. Cutthroat Island, a pirate romance action film, went on to become a spectacular box office disaster, sinking Carolco Pictures until their 2015 relaunch. The film's shoddy production, which resulted in numerous rewrites and recasts, 24 crew members quitting after the chief camera operator was fired, a cameraman breaking his leg, raw sewage leaking into the water tank, and the slew of other obstacles has earned it a reputation for mediocrity. The production's initial budget of $65 million increased to $115 million, necessitating an additional $1 million from director Renny Harlin in order to complete the project. The production was plagued by this rush, which also contributed to the growing budget, and there was a scramble to begin filming in order to fit in with Michael Douglas' schedule. He would later withdraw from the project. Poor acting, a cliched script, and numerous continuity errors were the outcomes. At the box office, the film only made $10 million. Number 4. King Arthur: Legend of the Sword. As much as we love the tale of King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, this 2017 movie turned out to be something you shouldn't have watched. Well, it was considered a major flop as the movie lost over $150 million. The movie starts out with King Arthur in the streets as he fights his way to the throne. But if you look at the plots and the scenes, you'd probably think the same. They were too choppy with that. The editing choices were not up to the mark. Some characters were introduced complete with backstories long after they'd already been part of the action. And apart from that, monsters are added near the end without setup. Number 3. 47 Ronin. Considering how everyone was drawn to Keanu Reeves back then, casting him in a samurai movie should be something you would want to look out for. That's where 47 Ronin comes in. It's a samurai action film that depicts a real-life group of samurai in 18th century Japan. But guess what? The movie didn't do well, especially in Japan, where people had high hopes for it. Considering that Universal Studios spent a lot of money making this movie, it lost about $152 million, making it the second most expensive box office failure after The 13th Warrior. The movie had a $225 million budget, but it only made $151 million at the box office. Number 2. The Lone Ranger. After the embarrassment of John Carter, Disney needed to make a movie that would end in a financial success. But then, Even with its continuous efforts, I don't think it was able to do so when it came out with The Lone Ranger. Sure, the movie was marketed countlessly, but considering the number of times we saw the trailer snippets instead of ads, it didn't do quite as well as anticipated. In fact, The Lone Ranger had a production budget of $225 million and a marketing budget of $150 million. But even then, after taking into account the revenue splits with theater owners, it was estimated that it would need to earn approximately $650 million worldwide to break even. Ouch! That's just too much. Number 1. John Carter. If we couldn't be specific about which movie brought the worst to its screenplay, it would be John Carter. Some even referred to it as the perfect example of how studios can take a huge risk when making a film with a large budget, and still turn the movie into one of the biggest flops. A staggering $350 million was spent on production and advertising for the science fiction fantasy movie in 2012. The movie ultimately ended up losing $200 million despite taking in $284 million at theaters across the globe. Also, John Carter needed to sell an additional 600 million tickets to break the budget, but it failed to do so. Let us know in the comments which movies you think are box office disasters. We'd love to know your opinions. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Press the bell icon to never miss an upcoming update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.